Okay, I wanted to do a short video on, I always say short, turns out to be longer than short, but this is a '04 CRF 450, and this is my bike. I built this into a stroker motor. It's like a 488, about 3 years back. Anyway, so I was out on a dry lake bed. It's supposed to be dry, but towards the middle of it, it got pretty wet and was ripping through this really fine silt, but it was just tearing the power out of the bike. If you've ever gone through a lake bed like that, sucks the power out, and I was just ripping through it. Fifth gear, dropped it down to fourth, just holding the power on it. Well, I didn't realize it, but my transmission was really dried out. It's all because of this one part. It's called a reed valve. Here's this little reed valve that goes in the center case on an '04, and other ones have it as well. But I modified this because it was busted, and so I tweaked it and tried to make it work. Well, as you can see, as it sits right there, it's open. That's hard to get to focus, but this little reed valve here, what it does on a, come on, focus up. You can see, anyway, I just dropped it. What it does on these Hondas, they have two cases, sealed compartments. So you have your transmission oil, and then you have your engine oil. And what separates that is this passageway right here in this reed valve. And so what was happening is, as I was going along, I mean, this has been running for years and years and years, but slowly losing case oil, transmission oil, into the engine oil. And so I was really low, and this burned up my trans. Here's my trans here. And it doesn't look, there's no missing teeth or anything like that, but as you dig into it, you can see the bluing here. This got so freaking hot, so blazing hot, that in fact, it started screeching on me, and I figured out what the screeching was after I dug into it. There's metal, you can see there on those forks, the forks themselves were starting to melt. These are like a cast steel, and that was starting to deform there, running in the grooves, just how hot it got. So anyway, it'd be uneconomical to buy all the replacement parts. Some of these parts are still probably decent in here, but eBay is your friend. I've got some used transmission coming. But on top of that, I didn't want to have a issue with these bearings in the case. And so we're going to attempt, not in this video, but I'm going to try to get, this one's totally blind, really hard to get down in here. I'm going to try to heat this up around it here and then freeze this here and see if I can pull it out. But some of these are really tricky to get out, others not so bad. But I've got a whole new bearing set from All Balls. Actually, it's not All Balls, it's Hot Rods. So we're gonna be using this transmission bearing set. It comes with all my new bearings, but I've got the replacement transmission on the way in. I'm just working on getting some of the gasket material off, as you can see here. Everything else checks out okay. This is a mess in here, as always. I've got way too much stuff going on in this shop for how small it is. But when I did this stroker, I put in, didn't need it, but I put in a Hot Rods. You can see it's a Hot Rods crank. So this crank is fairly new, maybe got 15 hours on it. This is a Vertex piston. If you look really carefully here, you'll see some scuffing. I can't feel it with my nail at all. It's more visual. This got hot one time, same desert, different year. My water pump seals went out and the motor got fairly hot. This won't stay in focus. But anyway, this came from the heat marks, just getting overheated a little bit. It's still really tight. The bore, it's a Cylinder Works kit. The bore has the same marks, but has nothing you can feel with nothing you can feel at all. You can see them right there. But again, you can't feel anything with a nail, anything like that. So when I built this motor, I got that bike for like 300 bucks with a blown engine. This won't stay in focus to save its life. So the only thing I used on the motor was the cases. I bought a brand new cylinder, piston, crank, brand new head. Those are Kibble White valves, springs, retainers. I did use a stock cam, that was fine. So that's a stock cam carrier. So, but the head was a brand new casting, put all that stuff in it, which that's really the most expensive stuff is your piston, cylinder, and head, especially the head's fairly pricey. But then I've got over here as well, I did reuse these. These are actually some nice pieces here that came in the bike. This was a pleasant surprise to find when I bought the bike. It's got a full Hinson billet kit, inner, outer pressure plate. So that's, especially for me being a heavier rider, that holds up really well to, you know, notching on the basket. This I bought brand new because I had a crack in the old one. It was leaking oil pressure out from a crack right here that I've scuffed it up. So, but anyway, that case is still reused. I had to rebuild that water pump, like I said. We're going to be putting this all back together here in the next few days as parts arrive. But just a word to the caution: don't mess with. Don't try to modify little parts that cost $10. That's my lesson on this one. So hopefully I have it in here. But I bought, you know what's awesome? My house is literally less than a mile from Rocky Mountain ATV here in Payson, Utah. So that really makes things nice. And they carry the OEM parts for Honda. They have most everything. But again, this is the little part. Let me pull it out here. That was exciting looking at that. But this is the new one here. Focus. As you can see, the new one is closed by default. And it burps when it needs to burp. I can't get focused to save my life. Come on. Won't stay focused anyway. So, but anyway, that's the new reed valve. That'll be going in right here. And will alleviate the issue that I had. Oh, I've got it backwards. Goes like that. But that'll alleviate the issue that I had with getting case fluid between the halves. And then going low on my tranny. So that's what we're doing. Okay, we just got this case totally prepped. All the gasket taken off. This is the left side case, or what holds the transmission. And I stripped all the bearings out. You can see I've got that bearing out, and this tiny little roller bearing that goes for the shift drum. Now, this bearing here is not an issue. You can press it out from this side. You can get a hold of it and get it out. But these have these little lock tabs here. There, you can see those, and they have a flat screw. And you're going to need to use an impact screwdriver to get these out if you need to ever take those out. And then from this side, I just use my air hammer. I've got a anyway, I use a pretty hefty duty air hammer. There it is on the ground. It's a Cornwell, and it's got a just little, you know, hammer head on there, and that we can come in from this side and drive that out. I use that so much on different things, but these two present a different problem, and this is you're going to find on any dirt bike. They're blind, and you really can't get them out. Now, some people will say you can heat them up. I tried it with a torch and freeze it. So heat up not the bearing, but heat up the surrounding areas here, and then quickly hit it with an air duster to freeze it down and try to pull it out. I couldn't get it to budge. So I don't know, I have no idea what Honda tells you to do, but I don't have any special tools except for a puller for the flywheel for this engine. But so this was, the seal goes to that side. This was down in there. What I did is I just had a plate around. This is, you know, some 3/16 or whatever. And I've drilled a hole in that one spot right there, put it over the edge here, and welded a nut. You can see I welded a nut very carefully. If you're not good with welding, I don't know, figure out a better way to do this. But just, you don't want to tack into the aluminum at all. You'll mess up the case. So again, you can see that's a nut in the center there that I tacked into the bearing hub. And then I ran this through that plate there, and I just extracted it and pulled it right up and out for me. Makes a little bit of a mess in here, and I took this to the solvent tank and cleaned it all out, made sure I get any splatter or any of that all out of there. Same thing, especially for this guy. I'm going to show you the new one here. This is tiny. This is for the roller drum, and it is puny. And this is a hardened outer shell. And you're like, how am I going to get this thing out of there? Well, same thing. I started with a washer. There's the washer that fits about that size. And then on top of that washer, so I welded the washer to the inside of this race onto the rollers and whatnot. And then I got a nut that had a washer pressed or crimped onto it. You can see that's kind of one piece. Then I welded that on to the outside as well. I probably could have done without the bottom washer. I probably could have just welded that directly to the outside. And same procedure, pulled that right out. Now pushing it in, not a problem. You just got to make sure you don't crush them when we push them in. Don't push them too far, so just set them down nicely until they seat and we'll be good. Now I think I mentioned earlier all those there should press right out. But anyway, so a little bit of a trick if you guys need to on transmission bearing removal on some of the stubborn ones. Just be really careful not to mess anything up. So that's my 2 cents on that. All right, we've pressed all these new bearings in now. One little trick I used is the old bearings. Just to get a nice even push. So this would have been this bearing here. Just put that on there like that with the new bearing, got it squared up. Sometimes when you start it can't, like not sometimes, but like every time. So when it gets crooked, take this off. And I just used that. And just carefully got it squared up, then put this in here like this. And just sent it down. And you'll feel a distinct different sound, feel everything when it hits bottom. It's going down, then it just bounces and makes a whole different rattle. You'll know it'll be down. I did the same thing with that one, and then I did, of course, this one here for this one. This one you got to be careful on. Now, if you're putting this in, there is an up and a down. If you notice on this here, it's going to be really hard to focus. Focus up. Okay, we may not be able to tell here. Thin edge down. So this is the bottom of the case, or at the very, obviously how I pulled it. There's a thin edge to this shell, and there's a thicker edge. And I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but it's thicker on that edge anyway. Thicker, thin on the bottom. That's the way it came out, so I'd assume you put the new one in the same way. And once these bottoms don't get crazy on it, because you'll crush this down and pinch it. So we tried out the drum on it to make sure. Such a fragile bearing. It's so fragile. I wanted to make sure everything was good. Put the drum in, and we're good there. So I just need to go ahead and put in these with a dab of Loctite and with those little tabs right there. Now I'm going to order new screws because they get kind of junked up when you pop them out. So they're 60 cents, so I'll get 2 new ones there. Fortunately, these are flush like this to the flat screw and flush because I need the clearance for the gears that are rotating right there. On these other bearings here that I need to take out, they've got a hex. Those are Allens right there. So those will come out with an Allen and we'll be able to reuse those without any issue. But anyway, we'll go ahead and get the transmission parts coming in the next few days and we'll start making a good assembly out of it.